Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Profile T1 webinar. Let me just make a few changes to the screen. I'm going to share my screen and open up my camera just to say a quick hello to everyone. All right, give me a second here. Here we go. Let me make sure I am sharing the right screen. That should be the one. So let's see if we can see my screen. Let me just start the presentation and we'll get going. So it would help if I hit the right key. So thanks again for being here today. We're going to go through Profile T1 for newer users, folks who are relatively new to Profile. Let's start my video. Let me just start up the video here. Here we go. So thank you for being here. Welcome one and all. I'm going to confess right up front if my voice sounds a little bit scratchy. Yes, I caught a dreaded flu. I bragged all winter last year that I did not catch a flu at all during the whole winter, and I was bragging to someone just a couple of weeks ago, and wouldn't you know it, I got bitten. So anyway, we'll muddle through. Let's just quickly go through what we're going to be talking about today. And I'll also introduce myself very quickly. My name is Michael DeLauro. I had my own CPA practice for very many years. And about, I can't remember, 5-6 years ago, I decided I really enjoyed technology. I really enjoyed training and teaching and all that stuff. And so I kind of shifted over to that line of work, if you will. And I'm certainly not alone today. We've got a couple of people that are working with us in the background. Christian is here. Christian and I have worked together in the past. Christian is the Zoom guru. He's the fellow who knows everything that's going on with Zoom. So he's going to take care of all of the technology in the background. And also, mostly in the background, but you might hear his wonderful voice. Duncan Robinson is here as well today. Duncan is the real profile expert. I'm not. Duncan is. Duncan is here to answer your questions. You will see a Q&A panel on your screen. You could click on that to open up a little window, and from there you can ask a question. It'll be, obviously, you type in your question, and Duncan is going to reply to your question in writing. And as it happens in the past, Duncan and I have also worked together for quite a number of years. And every once in a while, you might hear Duncan open up his microphone and add some invaluable nugget. Like I say, he's the real expert. And so we may be lucky enough to hear Duncan talk to us during this webinar.
I may as well interrupt right away.
There you go. Hey, Duncan.
Right. You'll probably introduce yourself.
Yes.
But you're the one that has the years of experience using the product with many types of clients. So
well,
I have inside knowledge and experience with the product, but you're the guy that knows how to use it.
Geez, you're too kind. Yeah, I mean, definitely been using Profile for, we don't even count it in years anymore, count it in decades. So yes, the office I was working in many moons ago, we were working on with another software application for taxes, and then we switched to Profile back. I think it was 2000 or 99 or something. So it's been a long time. And so, yeah, I don't do that kind of work anymore, though. I must confess, I know what it's like to run a T1 office or a tax office, especially in the month of March and April. And so, yeah, I tip my hat to you all for plugging away and doing some, some very, very, very valuable work. As you can see here, we have an hour and 15 minutes, so we really move along. We're going to introduce to you a whole bunch of stuff. You're going to see the program in a couple of seconds, or the agenda. And it's 60 minutes of instruction and then 15 minutes for Q&A. Those of you that need a CPD, you will get an email. I think the next slide is going to talk about CPD. So you will get 1 CPD credit for being part of today's webinar. You should have received a handout when you registered or when your registration was confirmed. And that handout is I can't remember how many pages, roughly 100 pages or so, training guide specific to today's webinar. So you should have gotten the PDF of that document. And the other thing we do ask is if you are asking questions, if you could kindly reserve your questions or focus your questions on our subject matter for today. There's the slide about the CPD credits, and as you just can see right here, it says, let me just change my pointer. Let's use a laser. So as you can see right here, you will receive an email with your CPD credit. So who is this training for? Well, if you're a new ProFile user, if you recently started using ProFile, you want to learn the basics, you want to get up to speed as quickly as you can, and learn some key functionality. Those are really the crucial things we want to talk about today. I know sometimes we have folk come into these webinars who've been using it for maybe as long as I have, maybe even longer than I have. And sometimes if you are here, welcome. And we may not be showing you, all kinds of new stuff, but sometimes I've been told in the past where somebody said, hey, I've been using ProFile for 10 years and I never knew it did that. So maybe we might be able to throw out a few tips that either are new or we're just kind of hidden in the background for most of us. And so there's our learning objectives. Why ProFile? How to work with the ProFile licensing, how to get help, very important, especially during tax season when we trying to do something, can't figure out how to make it work. How to set up ProFile, and we'll get you started on setting it up and how you could personalize ProFile. And then we'll go into navigating, and we'll run a very basic mock T1 return, and then we'll show you how you could print that return, how to, rather than print, maybe do a soft copy via PDF. And then we'll talk about something called Intuit Sign, how to get e-signatures with ProFile. And we do have to note that today is a webinar on software, i.e. ProFile. We're not here to talk about tax tips or how to prepare a tax return in the sense of what should I do? I have a client that's got this situation and I'm not sure if can I do this? Unfortunately, we cannot entertain those kinds of questions. As we all know, tax can be rather complicated and complex. And so we just want to talk about how ProFile works, how to do some basic stuff in ProFile in today's webinar, but we cannot answer any kind of tax questions where someone's looking for guidance on how to prepare a return and what's allowed, what does CRA allow or not allow. Unfortunately, you can't do that kind of stuff today. So why ProFile? There's a lot of choice out there these days. We know that there's a lot more competition today than there was 10, 15 years ago. And so why stick with ProFile? I'll tell you why, as I say, the office I was working in all those years ago, why we chose ProFile and why we stuck with it. The first one is something called MAUI, which is Multiple Application User Interface. And that really means it's easy. It's easy to learn and it's easily to to port that knowledge onto another module. So let's say you start working with T1. I'm going to turn my camera off. I find it distracting, and it also eats up a bit of bandwidth, so I'll just turn that camera off. And so if you started with T1 and now you want to go on and work on a T2 return or FX, the Form Explorer, or you want to use you want to run a T3 return, well, if you know how to do a T1, then you'll know how to work in T2 or any of the other modules. And you will also find all the other modules inside of your one profile window. The software we were working on way back when was specific to a module. So there was, this, open this application for T1, open this other application for T2, and even tax years were all unique installations of software, and it was very clunky. And so as soon as I saw that in Profile, I figured, oh, this is so much better and so much easier. And so it's uniform, it's easy to learn, it's easy to use. The auditor, we'll talk about the auditor later, but there are 2,800 or more diagnostic checks. I always called it my second set of eyes. So whenever I worked on a tax return, I would always run the auditor. The last thing I did was run the auditor, make sure I didn't forget something, overlook something, and the auditor is really incredibly helpful. All kinds of help. We'll talk about that later. So if you get stuck on something, there's so many resources, as you'll see. You could customize it. Excuse me. You can customize it, and you could also start incorporating some online tools. We'll talk a little bit about the online tools later today. If you've got clients who are on QuickBooks, more on the T2 side, you can import some data, those Giphy codes, for example, excuse me, via QuickBooks. And so I'm just going to take a lozenge as I'm speaking here. I don't want to lose my voice halfway through the webinar. And so you can see there's all kinds of benefits to or reasons for choosing Profile. And let's just move the slide up. And let's talk about T1, because today's module or today's webinar is about the T1 module. And so what could you do with the T1 module? Well, you can carry forward files, obviously, from last year to this year. So if you were using Profile last year, all you have to do is carry forward. Nothing overly exciting there. But you can also carry forward from competing files. So, for example, it happened a few times where a client would come to me and say, I did my own tax return last year. I used TurboTax. And they would bring their TurboTax file with them. And they say, maybe you want this. And at first I would think, no, I don't really want that. But then I realized, well, there's all kinds of information there. Name, address, social insurance number, all kinds of stuff like that. And so I could carry forward last year's TurboTax file over to Profile. So you save some time. So if you were using something else last year and you need to carry forward all of your client files, you could do that in Profile. Obviously, it runs all scenarios, all provinces. We use something called CRA Autofill My Return. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Online backup is available. So if you want to safeguard your files, you don't want to lose any tax files, you could use Profile to back up your files online. And it's been around a long time. I should really mention that if you've ever had the experience of being abandoned by a software application, it happened to me twice in my career where we were using software and all of a sudden they decided, the people that made that software decided to abandon the market. And the first one was a tax software we were using. It was called TaxBite. This is way back, I think late 90s. And all of a sudden, we got notification that they're not going to be continuing in that industry anymore. And all of a sudden, you're like, now what do I do? It's not a nice feeling. And so one thing about Profile is I know it's backed by a major corporation. I don't have to worry about it surviving. And I know it'll be there in the long run for me. And because you know what it's like to retrain your staff, for example, or even just get yourself back up to speed with new software. It's it can be quite time consuming. And so hence why we stuck with ProFile for all those years. Now, when you are working in your office, it's tax time, the crunch is on, you're trying to do something, and you need to get some help. There's a whole pile of resources available for you. You can see them on the screen here. We're going to go through some of these one by one. And you could just easily go to the website you see right here, profile.intuit.ca support, and see all those resources. But you could also access help the old-fashioned way, if I could say that, right from in the product. So you could go to the help menu. So let's just go back to ProFile here. So if I go to the help menu up here, and I could click on ProFile Help, or I just press the F1 key on my keyboard, I'll open up the help window, and I could search all the help resources that are available inside ProFile. And that's one way of getting help. And let's go back to our PowerPoint. You could also enable a chat with a care representative. So someone from ProFile will have a messaging session that you could enable, and you could get started. And so you could type back and forth with someone at ProFile to get your whatever the issue is, get it resolved. And they could even, if you allow them, they could even view your screen. You have to, there's a little setup that has to happen. But if you give them permission, they can view your screen and they could see what it is you're trying to do. And I've used that myself a couple of times. Of course, there's the old-fashioned call tech support. You can still call them. There's a live community. We'll show you the live community in a second. So you could chat with your peers, ask questions or answer questions if you're so prone to do. And you get all kinds of account and license management as well. And so all of that comes from the help menu. So let's go back and look. So you can see if we go to the help menu, there's ProFile Help. There's also a user guide here. Now, I mentioned that you have a user guide, or you should have received the user guide after you registered for today's webinar. The user guide that you would get here by clicking on user guide under the help menu is a different user guide. This one's more comprehensive. It's over 200 pages, and it essentially goes through ProFile from A to Z. So if you want to have a look at a more detailed user guide, just go to the help menu and select user guide. And here, as you can see, it says start messaging, and there's the live community. So there's all kinds of ways in which you could reach out and get some questions answered. And when you do start a message, you'll get a window that looks something like this. And just fill in some key information. What do you need help with? And start the chat. And before you know it, you'll be chatting online with a representative from ProFile. My favorite resource was always the videos. I always enjoyed looking at videos, and there are hundreds of videos available for you to view by simply, one of the ways you can do it, the easiest way as far as I'm concerned, is you click on the training menu and then go to other training options. Let me show you how to do that. So if we go up to training and then select other training options, you're going to go to a website. So it will bring you to ProFile's website. And there's the user guide as well. You can see right here. You could also download the user guide by clicking the big orange button that's there. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that it has a video section here. And you could click on go to videos. And you could view all the videos that are available. Notice that we have core videos, advanced videos, recorded webinars as well. And there's all kinds of short, to the point videos. You see some of these are 6 minutes, 4 minutes, almost 5 minutes. They're short, they're focused, And if you need help with one certain aspect of profile, the videos, as far as I'm concerned, is probably your best bet. And the reason I like the video so much is I could view it, pause it, go and give it a try in profile. If I didn't quite get it, I could rewind the video, look at it again. Oh, I forgot to click that other button. And it's a beautiful way of learning how to use profile. And so my favorite resource, as I said, was always the videos. And then also under the training menu, we have tutorials. So if you go up, let's say you hired a new individual to work in your office, you want to get him up to speed with profile. We don't do these webinars all year round, as you probably know. And so you can go and check out some of these tutorials, and they're guided tutorials. So do you want to run a 2024 T1, a T2? What is it that you'd like to do? You could click on the module in the year that you'd like to work in, and then you could run this guided tutorial that's going to walk you through step by step how to work with that particular module. And so there's a whole pile of resources. And one more I'm going to mention. And what I'm trying to reinforce here is that you'll find help not only under the help menu, you'll also find help under the training menu, and you will also find some more under the online menu. So for example, if I click on online and then go to update information, I can go and check out what's new, what's fixed, any known issues with profile. And so a lot of resources available to you. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about setting up profile. It's easy to just get started. You know, somebody installed it or you installed it yourself and you want to get going right away. You could start using profile by just setting up a few quick settings. Of course, you have to manage your license. You have to tell profile or give profile your licensing information. And so you'll find all that under the help menu. We can see it says right here, manage license. And so you'll have to, if you don't already have your licensing info, you would have to put it in here. And that unlocks the modules that you purchased, whether it's T1, T2, the whole suite, whatever it may be. You can also enable flexible licensing. So if you have more than one computer and let's say you have a computer at home, you've got a computer at the office, and you've also got a laptop, and sometimes you work on this one, sometimes you work on that one. So what you could do is you could transfer the license from one computer to the other using something called flexible licensing. The other key settings you'll want to establish, there's a whole pile. You'll see some of them when we start getting into the product. But there's a few crucial settings you'll want to get going on right away. And of course, one of them is e-file. So you'll want to tell profile what is your e-file information. So if you go to the e-file window, or sorry, the e-file menu, and then go to options, what you could do is you could put in your e-file information. So CRA gave you an e-file number and an e-file online password. You probably renewed it recently. It's usually in the fall that we start renewing these things. And so you need to put that in so that you can e-file your client's tax returns. Notice there's even a T1, TP1 wizard here. You could click on that. The window's kind of small, as you can see, but it essentially does the same thing. It'll ask you for your T1 information, T1 license number or online e-file number and e-file password. And also if you do TP1s on the Quebec side, you could indicate what that Revenue Quebec e-file number is. The other setting you'll want to go in is the preparer setting. So you want to put in your firm's information, the name of your firm, the address, and all that information, all that contact information, as well as your rep ID or your group ID or business number for use with CRAs, represent a client, for example. And so where do we find that? Now you're going to see we're going to be going back to this particular menu fairly often. If you go to the options menu and then go to environment, you're going to open up a window that has all these tabs across the top. There's quite a few settings that you could go in and change or tweak. The one we're going to focus on right now is the preparer tab. And you could see I could put in my firm information, address, phone numbers, and then down here, I could put in my CRA credentials to represent a client and the consent forms and all that. So you'd have to put all of that into this window, okay, to get at least some maximum horsepower out of ProFile. And you'll see a little bit later why that's important. And then another setting that we'd suggest you take a look at, maybe you don't have to change it, but maybe you do. But at least you want to check where ProFile saves your tax files. So you probably have a location where you want all your tax files to go. Now, if you're working as a sole practitioner, maybe you're saving all your tax files on your own computer, and you want to make sure that any file that you work on, whatever the tax year, whatever the module, they all go to a certain location. Maybe you're working in an office with other colleagues, and no matter who works on a tax return from their computer, all the files go to one location. And so what you could do is go back again to, let me close that window just to show you once more how we got there. Go to options, go to environment, and then go to file tab. And from here, you could see all the modules. So there's 2024 T1, there's 2023 T1. So I could indicate where I want each of those modules and years to go. And so you could see that I've got it set up going to a OneDrive folder. And then from there, it's usually something like this: documents, my profile data, and then for T1s, the tax year. And then for 2023, it'll be 2023 T1, and then so on and so forth. Notice there's also a lock column here. By default, that checkbox is unchecked. And I would advise that you check that box, because what that box does is it locks in the file location. So my 2024 T1s are always going to go to the location that you see highlighted here. If I don't check the lock checkbox, what happens is, if you, let's say somebody brings you a tax file and you want to open it, and it's on a thumb drive or it's on another drive of some sort, and you click on File, Open, and then you change the location where you want to open the file. You say, oh no, I want to go to my E drive, and you go and find whatever that thumb drive is or whatever that location is. You change it, and you find the file and you open it. Now, what happens is, if you don't lock that location down, ProFile thinks that from now on, you will want to work from that directory. And so all of a sudden, ProFile is now looking for your files in another folder. It's not going to your default folder anymore. Okay, so that's why you want to lock that location down. And you can see I've got all the modules and all the tax years, and it is a very crucial thing to make sure you double check where your tax files are going. All right, let's go back to our presentation. And a couple of other things we'll talk about when it comes to setting up ProFile. Form selection is another key area that you'll have to tell ProFile about. So what do you give your clients when it's time to just get them to sign and you want to give them a copy of their tax file. Everybody has their own specific decisions that they've made. Some people say, oh, I give them everything. I give them the whole T1 jacket, all the schedules. I give them everything. And I give it to them in a hard copy. I print everything out. Others will be, well, I print it out, but it's just a summary and a couple of schedules. Others are like, no, I don't print anything. No matter what it is you have decided for your office, it's important to tell ProFile what that decision is. And so you do that by going to form selection. So let's go back to ProFile, and back again, we go to the options menu. And then we'll go to form selection. And here you can see it's quite an involved window. Notice that we've got tabs across the top. So here I would choose, for example, 2024 T1, and then make sure you select the print job. So I'm going to say for T1 e-file, here's what I want to give my clients. So notice there's some columns across the top here: file, client, CRA. I'm going to uncheck the file column. I don't want to print or PDF anything for the office. I don't want any PDFs or any printed copies of my client tax files. But for the client, definitely I want to give the client something. So I make sure the client column is checked. And then you could go through all of the rows here and you could check and uncheck what you want to give them. As you can see, it's quite involved. There's a whole bunch of lines here that deal with all aspects of a tax return, and you could decide what you want to give them. An easy way to do this, by the way, is you could just, instead of using the mouse, you could use the arrow key on your keyboard, go up and down the arrow key, and then hit the space bar to select or deselect a row. And that's how I've always done it. And notice you could also carry forward from last year's settings, however you decided to prepare the tax or to print out or PDF the tax returns from last year. You could use carry forward to just move those preferences over to the current year. So that's another important thing that you'll want to do. And then the final one, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you do decide you want to give your clients PDFs, then you could set your PDF options. So for example, how do you want ProFile to name those PDFs? So if I go back to options, go to environment, and you can see we've been working quite a bit from this options menu over the last 5-10 minutes. So there's a lot of power in this area of ProFile when it comes to personalizing it. So to select or set your PDF options, go back to options environment and select the PDF tab. And by the way, don't forget, there's a whole bunch of tabs here. So if you don't see the tab you're looking for, there's little arrows that you could click to scroll across the top of that window. And so here's the PDF tab. And now I could tell ProFile how I want it to name my PDFs. So here I've selected for T1s, use last name, the year, the return type, okay? And so by default, ProFile, would, if I'm not mistaken, will just put the last name.pdf or something like that. And if you're working with multiple years, you risk overwriting one PDF with another PDF. So that's why I would usually type in or select the year. And you could select what you want ProFile or how you want ProFile to name your PDFs by just clicking the little plus sign here and selecting what you want to include in the file name. The other thing you could do is you look down here, you could tell ProFile, where do you want to save the files? Do you want to save the files in the same folder that your tax files are? Or do you want to have a separate folder for your PDFs? And you can see here, I've selected some folders where I want my PDFs to go for each tax year and module. And the other thing you could do down here is you could decide to set a password. So in order for your client to open up that PDF, they would have to put in their name and their social insurance number, for example. So every time you create a PDF from inside ProFile, if you selected this option, will assign a password to those files that include the can't remember if it's the last 3 digits, to be honest with you, but a certain part of the client's social insurance number. So all kinds of security baked right in, as you could see. Okay, I know we have to go very quickly. Let's talk about navigating in ProFile and how to use shortcuts. So to get started, you'll either generally be creating a new file, maybe carrying forward last year's file, or reopening a file that already exists. So you can go to the File menu and you could select New. You could select Carry Forward. And notice you see here, you could carry forward competing tax files. There's also icons that you could see here that you could use to create a new file, open an existing file, carry forward, and so on. So if you got the icon bar, that will help you do all that kind of stuff. So let's pretend we want to create a new file. So I'm just going to click the new icon, and there you go. I'm in a new T1. Notice that ProFile opens at the personal information page. And let's go back here. ProFile also has all kinds of forms and schedules, which we'll go back to in a sec. We do not enter anything on the T1 jacket itself. And you'll also probably already notice there's a whole pile of yellow fields. So here's all those yellow fields. So we're not in the T1 itself. We're on these ancillary forms and schedules that flow information to the T1. So if I go to the T1 tab, notice that ProFile does have some tabs that it opens across the top. And so here's the Info tab. Here's the T1 tab. So this is my T1 return. And again, you see a lot of yellow fields. We'll talk about that in a sec. And there's a T4. And so we do not enter information on the jacket itself. We put information on, for example, the info page. So I could put in the client's social insurance number. I could put in their name and so on and so forth. That information will then flow over to the T1, okay? And so that's how we work with ProFile. We work with these forms and schedules. And so how do we find those forms and schedules if I want to enter some T5 information or some RSP information and so on? Well, this is where the Form Explorer comes into play. The Form Explorer is a window that gives me all the available slips and schedules that I could use in a T1 return. How do I open up Form Explorer? You can do it by clicking the plus icon on this tab right here. So if I click that, I'm going to have my Form Explorer open up. I could also do it by selecting or pressing the F4 key on my keyboard, which is what I prefer. So F4 will open up the Form Explorer. And now what I could do is I could type in what it is I want to open. So for example, T5, I want to enter some T5 information. As soon as I type in T5, ProFile jumps to that relevant slip, and I can just click it now to open up T5. Now I want to go and open something else. I could do F4 again and pretend I have some donations. So I type in DON for donations, and ProFile jumps there. And now I could open up the donations schedule. Now, maybe you're thinking, yeah, but what if I don't know the name of the form that I need to open up? Well, ProFile's got you covered because you'll notice there are 4 icons on the right-hand side of that window. We're in the detail view. There is also a list view, so it just changes the window such that you don't see any description of the forms, you just see the name of the form. There's a line view. So if you know the line numbers, you could actually search by line number. I personally never really memorized very many line numbers, but if you do know the line numbers, then you could do a line search, or you could do a keyword search. You don't know exactly what it is you're looking for. You know it has something to do with tuition. So you could type in tuition, and now ProFile is going to give you all of the hits that meet that description. So you could search by line number, by keyword, by form, either in a detail view or just a summary view inside of Form Explorer. And so essentially then, when you're working in Profile, you're going from schedule to schedule or form to form using the F4 key or clicking the plus icon to open up Form Explorer. Now, we mentioned that there are tabs across the top of the page. So you can see here, I've got these tabs. Let me close Form Explorer. So I've got the info tab open right here. I've got the T1 tab, the T4, the T5. Something that I used a lot was what's called the 5-year summary. I really loved using this because when I had return clients, I could quickly glance at how does this year's tax return compared to that year's. And I could view at a glance what the employment income was, what the investment income was. And if all of a sudden there's a massive drop in investment income, it might point to maybe they forgot to give me something. And so it's a great way to check the uniformity of a client's return from year to year. Now, I would use this 5-year page to view all of my returning tax clients. And just to kind of get a sense that, yeah, I think we're complete. We've got everything we need. And so rather than use Form Explorer and then go and select 5-year, what I could do is I could take that 5-year summary and I could drag it up. So I could just click on it and hold the mouse button and I could drag it up to my jump bar right over here. I don't know if you see my mouse moving. It's very small, but I'm going to drop it right on the jump bar. And there it is. You can see my mouse moving. Now I've got the 5-year tab on my jump bar. So wherever I am in Profile, I could just, to get to the 5-year summary, I don't have to open up the Form Explorer, ask for the 5-year summary. I could just now click on the jump bar and go straight to my 5-year summary. So you could personalize Profile by putting the forms and schedules that you want to work with. And you could get them by just one mouse click. So here's my T1 summary, for example. So you could view your tax summary by just adding it to what I call that jump bar. Okay, a couple of other things. There is in Profile something called the Quick Start window. And what this window does, as you can see here, it shows you the last files you were working in. And it just show it to you in Profile. So let's click on Help and then select Quick Start. And here's all the tax files I was working on recently. So you could see, I could see all, not all, but a number of my last tax files I was working in. I could also create a new, I'm working right now in the 2023 T1 module. So it's going to say, do you want to create a new 2023, open another 2023 T1, carry forward, or do you want to select from one of the files that you see displayed here? Notice I have access to the resources, this Profile help, and a whole bunch of other resources, product info, and all kinds of information. Now, what I really like this feature, the Quick Start. And so what I wanted is to have this window open up as soon as I fired up Profile. And you can see there's a checkbox right down here at the bottom that says Show Quick Start when you start Profile. And check that box, and this window will open up as soon as you launch Profile. Just another little shortcut, because oftentimes we just want to go straight back to the return we were working on this morning or yesterday or whatever the case may be, or you want to work on the return that you were working on a couple of days ago, and you could quickly view them right from here. So that's one of the reasons I really like the Quick Start window. And then, of course, we start recording our information. So let's pretend we're putting in some T4 information. Now, we talked about the yellow fields. The yellow fields essentially tell me if there's something wrong, something missing, something I've overlooked. So here it's telling me if I hover my mouse pointer on those yellow fields, a little window opens up to tell me you forgot to put in the client's name, the client's last name. And even though I put in a social insurance number, the field remains yellow, and it's telling me that's not a valid social insurance number. So if I put in if I correct that social insurance number, now the field goes white, as you can see. And so that means that information looks accurate. And so that's what we call the passive auditor does. It highlights in yellow anything that's missing or incomplete or maybe incorrect, including, as you could see here, if I put in a T4, I've got the employment income and I put the T4, the CPP on the T4 per the T4 slip, and then Profile does a check and says, wait a minute, that's not correct. That kind of income, the CPP deducted should have been 3754. And so it's asking us to check, did we put in the wrong number? And if it was the correct number, that's what the T4 slip says, so we have to go with it. We'll show you how to deal with that in a little bit later. And as you can see, therefore, Profile checks even whether or not the things like the CPP or EI amounts are correct. Other things that you could view at a glance, font colors, believe it or not, tell us a story. So what happens is that when I'm working inside of Profile, notice that the social insurance number is black. If I put in somebody's name, let me just do this. So you could see that the font is black font. If I go to the T1, you'll see that it's blue font. And you'll also see other areas. So if I go to the T4, for example, there's some black font, there's some blue font, there's some green font. Believe it or not, that's not there just because it looks pretty. That's there to tell me. Oh my word, I'm sorry. I hope you didn't hear that. My chair, back of my chair just fell off. That was scary. Pardon me for that. Where were we? Font colors. Having quite a day here today. Okay, let's keep going. So I've got my black font, I've got my blue font, I've got my green font. And so black font essentially is user entry. So if you see black font, it means I could type in a number, okay? And blue font is something that Profile calculated or something that Profile got from another field. So Profile knows that if the employment income was 89, then 89,000, as you see up here, then income tax, not income tax, I'm sorry, EI insurable earnings maximum is 61.5. So Profile puts that in and puts it in blue font to say that I calculated that. You could override that. When you see blue font, you could override it and say, no, I want to, actually it should be this number. And notice it's in red. And when you see red, it means that you overrode a calculated field. And you could cancel that override by right-clicking inside the field and then deselecting override. Or you could just, again, if you like shortcut keys, you could just press the F2 key to cancel the override. So that's what blue fonts are. Blue fonts are calculated areas that you could still override. Green font means that it's a total or it's a locked field. So here I've got my 61.5. It's in green font. I cannot change that value. No matter what I do, I cannot change that. And so that's what a green field indicates. Okay, so there is some method to the font color. You'll also note, as you're working in Profile, sometimes you'll see purple font. Purple font means that you carried forward that value from last year. And so here you can see an example of that. I've got purple font here. So that's a carried forward, those are carried forward fields from a prior year. Okay, so font colors are important in Profile. And so if we want to run a T1, how do we get started? Well, we need information, of course. Hopefully you've got a questionnaire or a checklist that you provide to your clients that they know what to give you, all their slips, their contact info, marital status, and all that stuff. Maybe you've got an engagement letter. You'll want them to sign your engagement letter. Of course, you'll want them to sign a CRA authorization so that you could go to CRA's website and get all of that info. And so what we do, therefore, is we could go into the info page and right here, the info tab, put in at least social insurance number, name, address, kind of enough to get started. And then from there, you could go and fill out the authorizer representative area. So you'll want your client to sign the authorizer representative form so that you could file that with CRA, and then CRA grants you access to that client's tax information. Now, I know that in the past few years, not ProFile, but CRA has made changes to the authorized representative. It used to be dead easy. You would just fill out this form, get your client to sign it, file it with CRA, bingo, you've got access. Now, CRA wisely has decided that, wait a minute, we want the client to confirm that you do have access to this. So it's a little bit more involved than it used to be. I would strongly suggest, if you're new to this, or rather unfamiliar with it, you could view all of that information on CRA's website, what's required to get client representation. And we have to make sure we adhere to those rules and requirements that CRA has set. But essentially, once you do have that form signed, you could go up to e-file and then e-file, excuse me, e-file the authorization form. And that's, the first step in getting yourself authorized to view your client's information on CRA's website. And then you could go into CRA and view information such as you see here. From there, all we have to do is start entering our or the client's slips. So again, using the Form Explorer, we could just press F4, or if it's already open, you could see the open fields or open forms across the top on the tab. So now I could go over to the T4 and I could put in the information. So I'll just use Ontario as our example, and then just start putting in whatever the information that you see on the T4. Notice how some of these fields remain yellow because it's saying you don't have the proper amount, okay? And so that's how you would start filling in all those slips. Then you can go to the T5, enter the T5 information, donations, enter the donations, and so on and so forth. And there's a whole bunch of slips that you could enter based on whatever your client's situation is. And we know that we could use Form Explorer to open up that particular slip that we need, T3 or RSP or whatever the case may be. So it's a matter of working with Form Explorer, filling in the information, and then moving on to the next slip by using Form Explorer again. Now, there is an easier way. Autofill My Return has been around for a number of years now. And as soon as Autofill My Return came out, I was a massive fan. I thought, this is great. This is going to make us more efficient, make it much more effective or easy, maybe is a better word, to prepare a tax return. And what does Autofill My Return do? You could see that it's got all kinds of slips that it could auto-populate. So if your client got a T3, a T4A, and all, you could see all of the info here, including retirement savings plans, contribution limits, home buyers plan, and so on and so forth. You could just use Autofill My Return. And ProFile is going to get all that information from CRA and import it. Now, theoretically, that's great. In practice, if you've used Autofill My Return, you know that sometimes there might be a few little buggy things going on. There might be missing slips, or there might be something incorrect. So we cannot rely on Autofill My Return 100%. What I would do is I would still ask for my client to give me all their slips. And I would use Autofill My Return, and I would compare what CRA has with what my client gave me. And oftentimes, invariably, what happened is CRA had more slips than my client had. They forgot to give me a T5. I had one client who notoriously, a retired gentleman who had a lot of investments, and he got T5 slips from I don't know how many different places, and invariably would forget to give me a T5 slip. And now with Autofill My Return, I could compare and say, oh, you're missing this slip from RBC. And I could call the person up and say, hey, about this? And then they would look, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay, I forgot to give you that one. So that's what autofill my return is really good for, is that I could get again some confirmation for the completeness of my tax return. And also it does make it easier to fill out a tax return. It goes more quickly. Now, instead of doing data entry, typing in all the numbers, I could just be kind of in review mode, if you will, and just fill in the missing gaps. So I loved autofill my return. How do we use it? It's dead easy. First, you need authorization, of course. And from there, you click on File, Autofill My Return, and then you'll be brought through this screen. Click Launch CRA Website, log into CRA's website, confirm the social insurance number that you're working with, and then ProFile will say, okay, we've got the data. You close the window down, and now you could confirm the information ProFile is bringing in. So I've got some T4s for this particular person. I've got a T4A as well. And I could view all this information, and I could add the information in a new column. So you'll notice the T4 has columns. And so if I click add here, add as new, ProFile would add a second column here and bring the info in. But what happens is if you already had, let's say, City of Ottawa, you started filling it out, or maybe it carried forward from last year, you already had a column that said City of Ottawa here. And now ProFile says, oh yeah, we've got a T4 from City of Ottawa. Well, I'm not going to add it as a new column. Now I'm going to say replace that column that says City of Ottawa that's got no data in it. So pay attention to that. Do you want to add another column, or do you want to just complete the column that you've already started? Okay, so pay attention to that. And the rest of it is that easy. You will also be able to view the data import summary, to view all the details of the slips and the amounts that were brought in by autofill my return. A couple of other things to think about. Is it 100% accurate? No, it's not. That's why, as I mentioned, you want to be kind of like in a review mode. You want to double check all the numbers. Watch out for duplicate data, duplicate imports. Watch out T3s and T5008s. They've been known to be inaccurate sometimes. So you have to still keep an eye on things. But in terms of speeding up the process, it is a time saver, definitely. Okay, very quickly, how do you check your work? You could use review marks. So this is something I would do before finalizing a return. I would confirm the slips, and you've got these review marks. You can see my mouse pointer moving around. I would just go in and select a review mark, and then I would say, yep, that's right, that's right, that's right, and so on, okay? And notice you've got some other review marks, which is like a question mark. So if you're reviewing your colleague's work or your employee's work, you could put in a question mark here and say, I don't know about this one. Go back and look at this again. So you could use review marks for your own work, or to double check on a colleague or an employee's work. And of course, the auditor as well. We talked about the passive auditor, those yellow fields. We also have the active auditor, and you could get the active auditor. Easiest way is press the F9 key on your keyboard. The window opens up at the bottom. Let me just enlarge that. And you could see all the audit messages now. And I could click on an audit message, and notice how ProFile jumps to that field and circles it. And now this is telling me, well, you forgot your client's street address. And so all kinds of information is there, okay? By just viewing the active auditor. And you can do that, open up the active auditor by pressing F9, Control F9 will close the auditor. You could also personalize the auditor and decide what you want the auditor to show you. I've never really made changes to the auditor personally, but you could go in and tweak it a bit. And then you're ready to file the return. Well, you're ready to get the client signature, and this is where you would then either print or PDF a copy of that return and you will also want your client to sign the T183. Now, back before COVID, I guess, CRA always wanted a handwritten signature on a tax return. Now CRA will accept digitally signed authorization forms. And so very quickly, I want to introduce you to Intuit Sign. It's integrated with ProFile. It's a great way for you to go and get e-signatures from your clients. So rather than having a stream of clients coming into your office, waiting to sign their forms, and that's time consuming as well. Now you could just do all of that electronically, and you could do it all from inside ProFile. So you could get everything signed with e-signature, and you could track those e-signatures. Where are they at? Who's missing? Who hasn't returned their e-sign forms yet? And so there are 4 easy steps. The first thing is, it's an add-on to your existing ProFile license. It's $120 for a year, $10 a month effectively. And so you would have to buy that license, and then you would do that. You would enter the licensing information by going Help, Manage License. And then you could add your new e-signature license. You can see it says right here, tax year 2024 e-signature. I have a license for it. And so that's the first step. You would indicate that you've got the license. Then the next step is you want to connect ProFile to Intuit Sign. So you could do that by going to Options, going to Integration. And notice that ProFile also works with DocuSign or Adobe Sign, and there's Intuit Sign. Now it says disconnect. I'm already connected, but in your case, if you haven't done it yet, you would see connect, and then you would just connect ProFile to Intuit Sign. And then from there, well, then you're ready to just go and get your e-signatures. So now I could go over, when I'm ready to get an e-signature, I could just click on File, e-signature, and then follow the windows that open up, and I select collect e-signature. And now I would tell ProFile, what do I want to get an e-signature on? I could select up to 5 of these forms and then click next, and then get to the point where, let me show you in the slides. So get to the point where I'm actually sending an email to my client from inside ProFile asking them to please sign this particular form. And then there's a dashboard as well where I could review the status of my e-signatures. Are there any that are missing? Some have expired, as you can see. You could set reminders so that ProFile automatically reminds the client that we're still waiting for an e-signature. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening with Intuit Sign. What does the client see? Very quickly, the client will receive an email similar to this one. Clicks review and sign, can preview the form, and then check the box that says, I understand this is a legally binding representation, and then select e-sign the document and put in their name, and that's it. They send it back to you, and your client has signed your form, and that's all there is to it. Another way to become so efficient with ProFile, and these are what we mentioned at the very beginning. We said we had online tools available to you. Well, there's an example of some of the online features now available in ProFile. And we're wrapped up. We are done. We're a few minutes over. We're about 6 minutes over. Apologies for that. And so thank you for being here. I'm just going to go, we have about 10 minutes left. And I'm just looking at the questions to see if there's any, see if there's any I can add. So I see that the Duncan is answering some questions. Let me see if there's anything. I think it looks like we're all caught up with the questions. So you've kept Duncan fairly busy, it looks like. Thank you so much, Duncan, for taking care of all the questions that have come in. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Someone's asking, do we have a poll question for CPD hours? I'm not quite sure, actually. I don't think so. You will get that email. So have a look at the email when it comes in. It should be there. I'm sure you'll have it by tomorrow. And I don't believe there's any kind of poll question or anything, but I can't speak for sure. I don't know. I've never received one myself. Let me see. Recording of this session, I think it will be made available. Again, we showed you where to get those videos. You might have noticed where the videos are sitting. There was a tab that said recorded webinars. So I suspect that you will eventually, once it gets processed and uploaded, you will be able to view a video, the recording of this webinar, including some other webinars as well. Someone is saying, I had a few times when the file said the file was eligible to be e-filed, but wasn't e-filed. Who knows? It's a hard one to answer. I suggest getting in touch with the tech support people, and seeing if they could walk you through whatever that may be. It could be a host of different reasons, and it's hard to surmise what that could be, that you couldn't e-file a particular T1. Abdullah's asking, I just subscribed to T1 Pro Tax. And the confusion is that the layout is totally different. Yes, Intuit, the people that make ProFile, also have ProTax, an online cloud-based tax application. It works the same as ProFile. It's the same tax engine. It's the same in the background. You know, the processes all the information. But yes, it does look different. It doesn't look like ProFile at all. So there is a bit of a learning curve. But it's not a steep learning curve. I also use ProTax, especially for your QuickBooks clients. If you have people who are on QuickBooks Online, ProTax is a great solution for them. We do have, Abdul, some ProTax webinars run by my colleague Jason. I'm not sure when the next one is, but maybe you want to check with Intuit, with the people at Intuit and at QuickBooks. I know there are webinars running for ProTax, and Jason is the fellow who's giving those webinars. Let's see. I think we're done. It looks like we've answered all of the questions. So why don't we call it quits? Thank you, one and all, for being here. Apologies for my scratchy voice. Hopefully that this bug will be gone pretty quickly. And if we talk to you again next time, it'd be great to see you back. And in the interim, good luck during tax season. And one more question before I wrap it up. Someone, Humphrey, is asking, what's the major difference between ProTax and ProFile? Well, ProFile, as we know, is an application that you install on your Windows machine. So you install a ProFile like we've been doing for a long time, and it runs on your computer. ProTax is a cloud-based, like QuickBooks Online. If you're familiar with QuickBooks Online, it's cloud-based, which means I could work in ProTax from any computer anywhere in the world. All I need is a computer and internet access, and I could log into ProTax. And it doesn't have to be a Windows machine. I'm a Mac guy. My main computer is a MacBook. And that's one of the reasons I love ProTax, is I could use my Mac to work on a tax return. I could also use my iPad. I could work in ProTax from my iPad. And so it also works, it's more integrated into QuickBooks. So if you've got clients that are on QuickBooks, that is another solution for you as well. And again, I encourage you, if you're interested in ProTax, to check out Jason's ProTax webinars, where he does basically the same thing that I'm doing on the ProFile side. He will do it on the ProTax side. So yeah, you could check out those webinars, or you could just go to the QuickBooks website and you could see all kinds of information about ProTax as well. And on that note, I think we're done. Thank you again for being here. Thank you, Duncan, for your help. Christian, thank you. Great to hear your voice again, and maybe we'll talk to you tomorrow. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up today's webinar. Thanks once again, one and all.